Welcome to the Adam Thompson Show. Cutting edge.
He just told you to shut the up.
No holds barred.
Thanks for not calling me a liar, son of a...
The latest trending topics, legal cases, and social issues. In-your-face commentary on all subjects. Adam Thompson.
You can't handle the truth.
Adam Thompson brings his 25-year experience as a high-profile criminal and civil trial lawyer and gritty New York street smarts and attitude to the studio.
Real unbiased talk.
Those who want respect, give respect.
You never know what he'll say next. This is the Adam Thompson Show. Here's your host, Adam Thompson.
Welcome, everybody, to the Adam Thompson Show. As always, it's going to be a riveting hour. I guarantee you we're going to have great information for you, as always, and discuss the most trending topics and things that you care about. You know, there's a lot going on in the news the past week, more than usual, and that's saying a lot. You just got to look outside your window and you'll see there's snowstorms, not just outside where you are, but pretty much across the country to the likes we've never seen before. You know, we had that Arctic blast a few weeks back that really just scared the heck out of a lot of people. But now we're getting a second wave of it, and it's much worse than the first go around. You have portions of the South that are completely just shut down. Some school systems in Atlanta, Georgia, for example, from what I understand, have already closed schools for a week in anticipation of their ability to have to respond to the snow removal. I mean, this is just a frightening thing how we see weather progressions are just getting dramatically worse. Hurricanes are stronger, tornadoes are stronger. We see storm surges following these types of storms that are increasing from, 5 feet level to 10 to 12 to 20. Look at Sandy and what it did to New York. I mean, my office in downtown Manhattan was basically put underwater. Our entire basement and part of our first floor that we were unable to even get access to the building for 2 or 3 months. I mean, it's just pretty alarming what's going on now with these weather patterns. And to everybody out there in those areas, hey, listen, stock up on your drinks. Make sure you got a lot of water. Make sure if you have a fireplace, get the wood in there going, because you may be without power and you're not going to be able to get access to the stores, and trucks aren't going to be able to get access to get to the stores. So get the bare necessities that you need and just hunker down and get a little at-home time. If you got a family, enjoy the family. If you're by yourself, alone time could be a good thing. Reflect on your life and things that you need to do. With that said, now that we got the template that we're home and snowbound and some of us can't get outside, what else has been going on that's important? Well, the other day on Wednesday, there was a really big movement that started, and I like to discuss it because it's things that we discussed on this show many times, and it's about the government spying on us. It's about the NSA. It's about the government listening in on cell phone calls and recording them, listening to our messages, reading our emails, reading our texts, downloading all of it into databases, and then being able to do searches for keywords to see what we're talking about. And that's just wrong. We're entitled to our right to privacy. We're entitled to be able to live our lives as long as we're doing nothing illegal or criminal. We should be able to live in that privacy under freedom of being watched. We have a thing called the Fourth Amendment, folks. It prevents the government from illegally searching and seizing us. And that includes stuff as our internet communications. That is intended to be private. When I'm talking to a friend or a colleague or a family member, I'm not expecting those emails to be read by someone else, let alone the government reading it and then possibly down the line using it against me for whatever reason they see fit. And the other day, there was something called the Day We Fight Back. And it was a nationwide protest against the conduct of the NSA, fighting against the government, people speaking out and saying, we've had enough. We have rights. We want to be heard. I know one for myself, I posted all over my Facebook page and all my social media accounts, information talking about this, spreading the word, and having people speak out, including contacting your local officials and people that we elect to office and let them know that we want them to vote against this conduct continuing and that they need to enact laws to completely restrict this. The argument, folks, that they're saying it ends certain types of crimes or fights terrorism is just a fallacy that's being pushed by the government to be able to take away our rights. Because in an independent study that was done to see what good materials usable information came out of this invasion of privacy of U.S. citizens basically was determined to be nothing. There was no useful information that led to a single piece of crime being stopped. There was nothing that happened with terrorism like we got some big plot. It's 24 hours on TV, but now it's come to life and we got them. We got the cell. None of that happened. They may want you to think that. They may fearmonger and try to scare you into thinking if we don't do this, then that will happen. But you got to remember, our rights are most important. We have to make sure that we just don't let the government step in and take away those rights. And a lot of people, a lot of times in certain situations, they will buckle down and they will say, well, when we got the lesser of all these evils, sometimes you got to give up your rights. Let me quote to you, Ben, folks. He said one of the best quotes, I think, back in the day, and it holds true now. They who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. How true that was and how true it still is. So just keep that in mind. We don't sacrifice over fear those rights that are fundamental to us. It's just very important to keep that in mind. So I want to applaud everybody that participated in that to spread the word, but keep it going. Most important, those elected officials that do not fight against ending the NSA censoring that's going on out there with the listening in, the surveilling, vote them out. Remember the names. Remember the people that don't stand on the side of our rights. And when the time comes, show by numbers that we won't tolerate it and vote them out of office. That's very important. I want everybody to keep that in mind. Okay. With that said, there's other things in the news I want to come back to, including class action lawsuit is actually going to be brought against President Obama and the government for the NSA spying. I think that's a monumental movement that's getting started, and we'll discuss that a little later. That's Senator Paul bringing this historic case. But at this time, I like to go to my first guest on a follow-up of a case we covered before, which involved the former mayor of San Diego, Robert Filner, who was accused of sexually harassing women in the workplace. It started off with one, and that was a client that Gloria represented, and springboard up to 18 different women. So I like to introduce and have back on the show Gloria Allred, who is a worldwide known civil rights attorney. She's been doing this for decades. She fights the good fight. She takes on unpopular cases with one goal, and that's to make society a better place to live in by fighting for things that are just wrong, whether it's women's rights, minorities' rights, whatever it may fall under any kind of gamut of the civil rights movement. She's there, and she's not afraid to be at the front of the line to start the battle. You can look up Gloria on her website. I urge everybody to do that at www.gloriaallred.com, and we're going to be discussing that case right now. Welcome to the show, Gloria. Great to have you back.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me, Adam.
Okay, let's get to it. I had you on before, and it's when breaking news happened, obviously, with the San Diego Mayor Bob Filner and all the sexual allegations came out, and you were right at the forefront and actually brought the very first victim forward with a lawsuit, Irene Jackson. So just by way of backstory to this, I'd like you to tell my audience what the allegations and case was against former Mayor Bob Filner and where we're at right now with the case.
Sure. On July 22nd, 2013, Irene McCormick Jackson and I announced that Irene had filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against then-Mayor of San Diego, Bob Filner, and the city of San Diego, which employed him. And now we're very happy to announce this week that we've agreed to a settlement of $250,000 to resolve Irene's case against both the city and Bob Filner. And in our lawsuit, we allege that Irene had been the mayor's communications director, and during the term of her employment that she was forced to endure being placed by the mayor in what's called a Filner headlock while he made degrading and humiliating sexual comments to her. And in addition, she alleged that she was required to suffer Mayor Filner's telling her that she should work without her panties on, that he wanted to see her naked, that he couldn't wait to consummate their relationship, and that he wanted to marry her. She was also subjected to Mayor Filner's demanding kisses, and on one occasion when he tried to kiss her and she told him to leave her office immediately, she alleges that the mayor responded that he was the mayor and that he could be wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted. Well, when it became apparent to Irene in June of 2013 that Mayor Filner wouldn't acknowledge or change his behavior, she felt it was necessary for her to resign as communications director, which she did. Then in the sexual harassment lawsuit we filed, we sought damages according to proof at trial. The trial was set for next year in February. And then this week, the San Diego City Attorney Jan Goldsmith announced that the San Diego City Council agreed to settle Irene's case for $250,000. And we believe that that settlement is a vindication of Irene's claims. And it's an outstanding result for her. The law in California does impose strict liability on an employer if an employee can prove that she was the victim of sexual harassment, and Irene did have evidence of her allegations, and she suffered serious emotional harm as a result of the mayor's continuous sexual harassment.
Well,
so
when you first came on, I remember it was so alarming, the conduct that he did, and it wasn't just one incident. I believe around 18 women came forward, and you really led the way with your client. And I really believe the fact that your client came forward and they had you as a spokesperson and really took that first brave step to call out a public official, it really enabled the other women that were victims of this man to really feel that they had support and people would then believe them. And I wanted to ask you, what impact has this settlement, as far as you know, had on these other pending cases and these other victims?
Well, we are the first case to be settled. The city attorney is saying, as far as I understand, the other cases will be resolved soon. I don't know what the resolution will be in those other matters. I can't tell you, but I do think I do agree with you that credit goes to my client for speaking out, and it took a lot of courage on her part. Also, the fact that Mayor Filner resigned, that was as a result of the mediation of our lawsuit that he resigned. So she accomplished her first goal, which was she wanted him to no longer be mayor of the city of San Diego.
Yeah, that's what I also wanted to ask. Because, there's always people out there saying, oh, these lawyers get involved with it for the money and that's all they care about. And that's not true. And again, you've been doing civil rights cases for decades, and a big part of this is to change the law and change bad habits or bad practices that are out there. So apart from the money part of this case, which your client is well entitled to, I might say, and add, but, what restrictions did they put on the former mayor in terms of keeping the job, ever getting another job in the public service realm again?
Well, he had to resign.
Let me just say, do you think it'll also impact laws in the future involving when a person of trust does these type of activities?
Well, the law in California is that an employer is strictly liable for any sexual harassment in the workplace. So the city of San Diego, being the employer of Irene and the mayor, was strictly liable. And I think that cities are not above the law, mayors are not above the law, other elected officials are not above the law. They have to obey the law like any other employer has to. And so I think that message has been sent loudly and clearly. Now, what happened in this case, besides the fact that he had to resign, was that he was also prosecuted. And he was prosecuted for a felony, I believe, for touching a woman's butt once. And also, I think, for 2 misdemeanors for kissing a woman, 2 different women, once. He was sentenced to house arrest, but also, in addition to house arrest for 3 months, he also had to agree to not run, I think, for mayor again, or not for a lengthy period of time, and also not or elected office. And also, I don't think he can even vote because he's a convicted felon. So this is quite a fall from grace, from power, for the mayor, who formerly was a 10-term congressman, formerly a member of the San Diego City Council. It's really a shocking fall, but he brought it on himself, so he's nobody to blame but himself.
No, absolutely. And I think that this should send a message, because there was such a string of picking up newspapers or turning on the news each night and seeing different people in trust positions doing conduct of this nature. From Wiener in New York to filling her out in San Diego, it was like you couldn't get away from some public official running for office. Elliot Spitzer, as you well know, with another different client that you had,
Yes.
just involved in prostitution, involved in all these public sexual exploits and sexual harassment. And I think at some point you need attorneys to step up. And again, I commend your client because, you know, in 25 years of practicing law myself, I could tell you in all the civil rights cases that I've done, and it's been in the thousands, people are so afraid to come forward because they honestly still believe that old saying, you can't beat City Hall. They really think you can't fight the law, you can't fight the government, that people will always side with the position of authority. And it's so brainwashed into the public, into society to think that way. You need people who are willing to whistleblow, step up and say, hey, this is what happened, and it's true. And a case like this, more than anything, really exemplifies that, because here's this guy who denied everything. I remember watching every press conference, denied everything, said everything was made up or exaggerated, and now look at it. Now he's entering guilty pleas in criminal court and agreeing to settlements in civil court. And if that doesn't say it all, Gloria, I don't know what does.
Yeah, and I have to say, the San Diego City Council and San Diego City attorney had a lot to do with settling the case. While it isn't easy for an employer, in this case, the city of San Diego, to decide to pay a settlement, it was the right thing to do in this case. And this settlement also avoided the risks of trial, which could have included a much larger judgment, which might have been awarded against them. So, yes, we're glad that this chapter is closed. Irene wanted to move on with her life. Most of all, she wanted the city of San Diego, which she loves, to be able to move on without this lawsuit pending, and we've been able to accomplish that.
Well, you did a fantastic job, and I got to say, when the case first broke and I heard that you were on it, I called within days. I said, this case is never seen in a courtroom. It's absolutely going to settle for a few reasons. One, Filner was just a mess, and every new statement he made contradicted the last. They had a powerhouse attorney on their side like you who would unturn every stone and make sure that all those inconsistencies came out. And finally, it was such a black guy on politics in general, but also the city of San Diego, that you had to think the employer was going to step up, bite the bullet, do the right thing. Because as you said, they rarely will settle. You really have to really pull teeth. But in this case, with so many women that came forward, if they didn't do the right thing and settle and just try to make this go away, that would have really set a bad tone for how, you know, San Diego reviews this type of conduct. And the fact that they are making it go away and doing the right thing and paying decent settlements, that shows that there's a little more faith restored in the system to some degree.
Well, thank you. And it has restored Irene's faith in the system, I believe. And by the way, San Diego just had an election, special election for a new mayor by the interim mayor after Filner stepped down. Guess what that name was? Mayor Gloria. I kid you not. The city
for lightning striking twice.
Is that hilarious? It was a city councilman named Todd Gloria who became interim mayor. A lot of people said that was poetic justice. But then they had this special election. And yesterday, a new mayor was elected, and that's Mayor Faulkner. So it's going to start again, and you know, we love San Diego, so we hope that people look at it more favorably in the future.
Well, Gloria, thanks for your time. Anytime something's breaking and you have something to share with us, you're welcome back anytime. Everybody, the one and only, the excellent Gloria Allred. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Adam, and I'm glad you had a safe flight and that you're well. I look forward to being with you again soon.
You got it. Take care, Gloria.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, my next guest on the Adam Thompson Show is well-known attorney Benjamin Crump from the law firm in Florida that you know him from all the great work that he's done on numerous cases, most recently involved in the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case. Mr. Crump represented the Trayvon Martin family and their interest in that matter. And we're going to be getting to him right now. With that intro, let's get right to it. Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
It's a pleasure having you on as a criminal defense attorney and a civil rights attorney myself for over 25 years. I know it's a hard battle to fight and things don't always turn out the way you want, but you got to keep fighting the good battle and keep the cause going. So I want to just start off by thanking you for your much dedication. And I know you donate lots of money to different legal services and organizations to really give the poor and the indigent a chance to get a good day in court and fair representation. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you so much, Adam, and it really is about fighting for the least of ye.
Well, absolutely. So let's get to it because there's so many questions I want to ask. Right now we obviously have the Michael Dunn trial going on, and of course the comparisons are out there between this incident where you have a white male shooting African-American teen, and we have another dead child. And you obviously represented Trayvon Martin in the Zimmerman case that had similar circumstances, a Hispanic white male shooting an unarmed, again, African-American teen. But having covered both cases myself, I really don't see similarities between these two. I actually see them as very different. So I wanted to ask you, who was at the forefront of representing the Martin family, how do you view these two cases in comparison?
Well, I agree with you in part, Adam, and disagree to a certain extent. First, the similarities, I think, Adam, are just right there in your face. Both Trayvon as well as Jordan were 17 years old when they were tragically taken from us. Both of them were young African-American males. And then you had these parents, these incredible parents, having to go through hell to try to get the killer of their children held accountable. Now, the biggest distinguishing factor, I believe, between Trayvon and Jordan Davis is the fact that there were three witnesses that lived to tell in Jordan Davis's case, and in Trayvon's case, that it was a situation where the only other witness besides George Zimmerman had a bullet in his heart. And so all we had was George Zimmerman's version of what happened. I believe that another big similarity in the case is just like in Trayvon's situation, we always argued that had his killer stayed in his car and simply let the law enforcement officers do their job, Trayvon never would have been killed and he never would have been facing, prison. And very similarly, if Jordan Davis's killer would have just stayed in his car and drove away and let law enforcement handle the situation, Jordan Davis would be alive and he wouldn't be facing prison. Now, what's really troubling to me is this whole stand your ground law, Adam, because even though, just like in Trayvon's case, the killer and Jordan Davis are saying, well, he's not a certain stand your ground, he's a certain self-defense. Well, the problem, as we all know as lawyers, is the jury instructions are sometimes very confusing. And in Florida, that instruction has to be given that the killer of Jordan Davis has a right to stand his ground, just like the killer of Trayvon Martin had a right to stand his ground. And so it gets really confusing. And in both instances, I believe that they put themselves in harm's way and did not have to stand, had no reason to have to stand their ground.
Well, I got to agree with you. I really think it's time for stand your ground laws to really be just abolished nationwide. And perhaps we need a federal statute to get enacted that'll just put an end to it. I mean, as a criminal defense attorney, I'm in full support, obviously, of self-defense and justification principles, because there's many circumstances where a person has to defend oneself when faced with a real threat of danger to their own safety or that of their family. But stand your ground just seems like a license for people to do exaggerated and unnecessary things and use that as a fallback position to really do these over-the-top aggressive actions such as we've seen in some of these cases. And I think until the law is changed, we're going to get a lot of this old Wild West mentality where people are like, well, I'm not walking away. I could stand my ground. And next thing you know, people are pulling out guns and just shooting in the streets. And it's insane to me.
Yeah, and Adam, where does it stop? And Trayvon is a young minority wearing a hoodie, and I felt threatened. And then in Jordan, a young minority playing loud music, I felt threatened. What's going to happen next time a young minority look at me the wrong way? I get to shoot them and say I felt threatened, because they're going to say the precedence is there. If I can say I felt threatened, it can be a completely subjective. It ain't got to be logical to anybody. I just got to say I felt threatened, and I can kill, anybody, especially these young minorities. Even in I don't know if you're aware of the theater shooting case in Tampa, Florida, where the 71-year-old retired policeman left the movie theater after he argued with the man about texting during the movie previews, then came back and shot him and said that he was standing his ground. Where's the end to this whole insanity of stand your ground? As we said often, if Trayvon's killer was exonerated, every Tom, Dick, and Harry who killed somebody was going to then say, I was standing my ground. And that's what we see playing out before our very eyes.
Well, it's certainly opening the door to more brazen conduct by a lot of borderline personality types, because when you see people get acquitted and you look at facts of cases and you see that evidence points a certain way or should end up in a certain way, and the results aren't what they should be, it just makes those people who will take that extra step, who have that personality, and you're going to see cases like this. The movie theater case is another example of that. I mean, what was he fearful of? That the guy was throwing popcorn or a soda at him, so he takes out a gun and shoots the other person. I mean, where does it end? I mean, it's pretty alarming to me. But let me take this in another direction, because I mean the jury's out on this case, and I was very vocal in the Zimmerman case covering it, because I literally on the second or third day called that it was going to be not guilty, not reflective of the facts. But as a defense attorney, I'm very cognizant of a few things that set the tone for a case. First of all, jury selection is everything. Who the audience is that's getting the information will determine the outcome. It's like a comedian. If you're telling a joke to an audience that doesn't get your humor, it's not going to go over. And same thing with a jury. If a jury doesn't identify with the positions or the points you're making, no matter how good or true it is, you're not going to prevail. And I see very different jury pools and the jurors that are selected between the Trayvon Martin Zimmerman trial and this case. Would you like to comment about that?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic that they are going to come back and return a verdict that is consistent with what most people believe the verdict should be, and that is, you've been held accountable for killing an unarmed teenage child. With that being said, I do think jury selection is the most important part of any trial. I do believe, though, that I'm not certain what this jury is going to do. It's one of those scenarios again where you're playing on the fears and the ignorance of people and trying to say that we should all fear young black males. They're criminals, they're thugs, and their lives are not that valuable, and if you kill them, it's not that bad of a thing. And so I think that was the innuendo put forth in Trayvon's case. I think that's the innuendo that was put forth in Jordan Davis' case. So I'm not confident. I've been in courtrooms too many times to see this card played and to see that when it's dead black children or dead black people laying on the ground, the rules are just different.
Well, I got to tell you, looking at the jury composition, I agree with what you just said. And when you pick a jury, the jury's going to really determine the outcome of the case, and they either get or don't get what you're trying to argue. And the problem is, a lot of lawyers won't say it, and I know a lot of talk show hosts don't want to go down this route, but so much of what happens in our society is just race-based and race-determined, and we're not past all the prejudice and all the, really the evil demons and negativity that's out there. And that doesn't magically stop when people cross the threshold of the courtroom steps to sit in the jury box. That's why you get so many cases where you see these really insane jury verdicts, and you're like, I don't get it. Well, it's because racism does play a part. And in this particular case, it's interesting because there's a few African Americans on the jury, And I think there's 8 whites, 4 male, 4 female, that are actually part of the 12 that'll be deciding the case. I can't see this guy walking, but I can also see a hung jury where he doesn't get convicted. I mean, do you think that's a possibility?
I think that's a very great possibility, and it's so unfortunate because when you think about it, Adam, if you reverse these scenarios, whether it be in Trayvon's case or Jordan Davis' case, can anybody fathom that Trayvon would not have went to prison if he killed unarmed George Zimmerman? And can anybody fathom that Jordan Davis wouldn't have went to prison if he killed unarmed Michael Dunn? But when you reverse the scenario, there's a distinct possibility that these killers are not held accountable, whether the jury's hung or whether there's an acquittal. So I'm very worried and concerned about it because I do think that I don't think it'll be a outright acquittal, but I think it could be a hung jury, and then, begs the question, what happens next? And each time we are setting precedents on these cases, and that's the troubling thing because, you can see this scenario playing out again and again and again.
Well, what might be really interesting is a bad result might actually help more to change law than a good result. Because if Dunn does get convicted, people will say, see, look, he went the stand your ground self-defense route and the jury didn't buy it. So stand your ground does work because, as you can see in this case, people can claim it. It doesn't automatically mean that the jury's going to acquit. But if he is acquitted or it comes back another hung jury, I think public outrage based on the facts of this case might be such that people will say, here's another guy that so clearly appeared guilty but is walking or in a hung jury situation. And that might really get, the steamroll going for real national outcry to really overturn this statute.
I think you might be right, my friend. And as bad as it sounds, I agree sometimes with Trayvon's parents. His mother says that, if we would have won, it would have been a victory for us and our family. But then everybody would have forgot about the larger implications of what happened. And in some ways, his being acquitted made us really focus more on the problems of our judicial system and our criminal justice system, the fact that when it's minorities, oftentimes you don't get what we call equal justice. And so that's the fight that we have to do, Adam. Each of us as officers of the court, each of us who care about equal justice in America, each of us that care about our children and their futures, we have to stand up and we can't be quiet.
Well, here's another question I want to ask you, and it's going to start getting to the harder direction now. You have the same prosecutors on both these trials. And when I watched the Zimmerman trial, the reason I was so quick to call out a not guilty verdict was I really thought the prosecution so completely dropped the ball in that case and did a terrible job. And when you compare these cases side by side, the facts are so glaring. I think the facts in this case, the Dunn trial, are so much more convincing to get a conviction on. I can't see how any prosecutor would lose this case, but you have the same prosecution team for the most part, and, questions about how they presented evidence, like holding back on the hour-and-a-half confession that he gave to police that really was riddled with inconsistencies that, in my opinion, because there was a lot of discussion, I think you and I both appeared on the same day on Jane Velez Mitchell's show, and we were discussing this, and I was pretty shocked that they didn't introduce that tape during their case in chief because, let the jury hear these horrible statements that this defendant made, all the inconsistencies. And then some people like, well, we don't want the same thing that happened in Zimmerman, that he won't take the stand then. And I think people don't understand that to get self-defense in under these circumstances, he was going to have to take the stand. And then when he does, you get to play the tape a second time when you cross-examine him. So the jury would hear that tape over and over. Do you think that the way that the prosecution, and again, this is going to put you on the spot a bit, but do you think they mishandled the prosecution of the case with Zimmerman? And how do you think they're doing on this case? Do you think they learned from some errors in Zimmerman and they're trying to do it differently this time around? Like they're a little more gun shy? What's your thoughts?
Well, Adam, the hope is that you learn from every case. I would say this, every lawyer has their own style, and I thought that there was enough there by the jury if they wanted to convict the killer of Trayvon Martin, they could have. I think a lot of it is jury selection. I still go back to that. And then I think a big part of it, Adam, has to do with the fact that I cannot be overly critical of the prosecution for this reason here. I'm a lawyer, but I'm also African American first. And I know in my state of Florida, out of the 67 counties and the 66 prosecutors, 66 of the 67 would not have prosecuted George Zimmerman. And Angela Corey's office at least took up the cause to prosecute him. So I have to give them credit for that. Because I see every day young black men killed and nobody says a word. Everybody sweeps it under the rug. And that's why we're out here fighting. For every Trayvon Martin, I can give you 50 other black children that nobody even said a word about their death, as if it didn't matter. So it goes a little deeper when I have to factor in the matters, and I just can't talk about the strategies of how they tried the case and stuff. I have very strong opinions, but I choose to not express those openly because I think that a lot of times when a prosecutor uses that discretion to try to defend the honor of the life of a young black person or African American, I have to applaud that because so many times they simply don't do it.
Well, I got to agree with that. I mean, the fact that at least a prosecution was brought, because initially there wasn't even going to be a prosecution. So that tells you a lot of what the mindset was even going into the case. But there's a lot of critics out there that say, hey, listen, when you look at the Zimmerman case, he was on videotape a lot of times. He gave very consistent versions of what happened, the same story really over and over. And that's why he never had to testify, because he told his story and the government played that to the jury to hear. But in this case with Dunn, I see it very differently. In Zimmerman, you had a witness from an apartment saying that they saw Trayvon Martin on top of him, grounding and pounding him and hitting him. Zimmerman has physical injuries that are apparent on the back of his head. There's none of that in this Dunn case. You have no witness that says there was any physical contact towards this person. No one sees a weapon. There's no one coming to Dunn's defense saying it's true. And in fact, he gave statements saying that his fiancée who was with him, he told there was a gun or a weapon, and she said that was never said to her. So, I mean, I can't imagine a more clear set of facts going against Dunn, but that little voice inside me saying, there's probably going to be a hung jury.
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, Adam, I'll be honest, to me, Trayvon was straightforward that his killer should have been prosecuted. I think Emmett Till killers should have been held accountable. When I say prosecuted, should have been held accountable. I thought Emmett Till 50 years ago. I think Jordan Davis. So in my mind, Adam, and I'm being just completely frank and honest with you, I'm not sure it matters how clear the facts are. A lot of it does with the larger implications of society. And as we talked about, race is a major factor.
I think race plays a part more than any single factor in all. It goes to O.J. People were like, O.J. got acquitted because there were so many African Americans on the jury. They weren't going to convict him. At worst, it would be a hung jury. And when you just look at cases and you say, okay, how do we decide this case? What's the evidence? Who's the witnesses? What's the forensics? It all comes down to race almost every time. And it really gets disheartening that we're living still in a society like that. But that is the reality.
Especially when this is supposed to be the post-racial society with the election of the first African-American president. In many ways, it has become more pronounced and more profound, these racial issues.
Benjamin, I want to go a different direction now, and I want to ask you about another case I know you're involved in, which I just find completely outrageous, and I feel for this family, the Kendrick Johnson case. The young boy that was found inside his school gym rolled up in carpet. And nothing's really going on with this case. What are the police doing, and where's this case right now? Can you tell us about it?
Yes, and I think it's important that we give your audience a background of the case. Adam, he was Kendrick Johnson, 17 years old, another 17-year-old African-American kid. His parents sent him to school and with his book bag, and he's returned to them the next day in a body bag. And the sheriff's explanation within 2 days, and his conclusion is that Kendrick climbed into a rolled-up wrestling mat, got stuck, stopped breathing, and died. That is the explanation from the Lowndes County Sheriff's Department. It defies all logic, science, and common sense when you really think about it. This gifted athlete, a superstar football player, superstar track runner, would somehow get stuck trying to climb into a wrestling mat versus what the Johnson family believes, that somebody murdered their child, rolled them up in the wrestling mat, and left them in the gymnasium trying to cover their tracks. And you have all kind of just unexplainable things. The fact that his fingernails were cut off, so if there was some kind of altercation, there would be no skin or DNA under his fingernails, as well as his clothes are missing, so we can't find if there was blood or DNA on the clothes from some other individuals who he might have been in an altercation with. And on top of all of that, when his parents made the very difficult decision, Adam, to dig him up and exhume his body to have a second autopsy done, they found that his vital organs were all missing. His heart, his tongue, his lungs, everything was missing. And so his body was stuffed with newspaper, and it was just very troubling to this family as they try to get simple justice, but not only that, just the truth, to find out what happened to their son.
Well, anyone out there that thinks that he basically jumped in this rolled up carpet and killed himself is living in a fantasy world, because that defies every scientific principle that's out there. And I think, just as you recap the forensics in the case, when you have a situation where every forensic link is missing, so you can't recover trace evidence, hair particles, clothing fibers, and everything else, that doesn't happen accidentally. I mean, this has murder written all over it. Something happened to this kid, and he was killed, and they dumped his body in this carpet, and it's being covered up for whatever reason. So is law enforcement still investigating this case and doing something about this, or is this just a closed file?
Well, the U.S. Attorney's Office is reviewing the case. The U.S. Attorney from Georgia is reviewing the case. But, Adam, what we've wanted and what we have been seeking is a coroner's inquest. So we will have a public hearing as to the cause and manner of death of Kendrick Johnson, and everybody can see how ridiculous this is. And you can call witnesses, can have the evidence presented before a magistrate or a judge, and we can determine as we watch it whether or not anybody believes this asinine conclusion that they brought up. Even the fact when they try to say he was trying to get a tennis shoe, that's why he climbed into the wrestling mat. Well, when you look at the photographs from what we believe is a crime scene in the gymnasium, you have the shoe sitting in a puddle of blood, but then you have no blood on the shoe. So it seems very clear to Kendrick Johnson's family that he was murdered, and this is a cover-up.
Well, it certainly seems that way. When the autopsy came back, did they show any signs of blunt trauma or injuries to his head or his body?
To his neck, and then also the EMT noted that on their report. And oh, by the way, there were tweets and social media that said as early as 7:15 that morning that they found a dead body in the gymnasium at Lowndes County High School from the students. Now, the troubling thing is that it's not until almost 10 o'clock that we are finding something official that reports him not as dead, but a cardiac episode. And so the EMT personnel were baffled by, why didn't you tell us it was a dead body? So it's so many things. Yes, there was, to answer your question, there was blunt force trauma found on his body, both in the exhumation as well as before he was buried initially. But yet the medical examiner for the state of Georgia has said, we're going to classify this as an accident. We're not doing anything else, and you all need to, it almost suggesting just get over it.
Wow, that's just so appalling. And I know you're going to stay on top of this, and you're going to keep the battle going to try to get justice for the Johnson family, and rightfully so. I understand that a lawsuit has been filed against the coroner's office for the removal of the organs and not placing them back in the body. Yes. Where's that stand right now?
Yes, a lawsuit has been filed by the family against the funeral home director for stuffing the body with newspapers. But more importantly than that, and this is really the crux of the matter, Adam, is who did remove those vital organs from his body and throw them away? Was it the funeral home director or was it the government officials? They're both pointing the fingers at each other, and we got to get to the truth of the matter so we will know who actually kept the Johnson family from being able to re-examine those organs and get this valuable information that can help them really find out what happened. Because the pathologists say with those organs, it would tell us so much. But without those organs, we are set back once again. And so that lawsuit is really about trying to find out who discarded those organs. Was it the funeral home director or was it the medical examiner's office?
Well, I hope when the time comes, you get your opportunities to take depositions in that case. You're going to put them under the flame and really hopefully get the truth to come out, because they're going to have to point fingers at each other, how the funeral director, what condition he got the body in, and the coroner's going to have to testify on the testing that he did and the condition he left the body in. So you're going to get two very varying stories, I have a feeling. But please keep us up to date on this case, Benjamin. I'd love to get you back. I appreciate and love the work you do, but we're out of time. Everybody, that was Benjamin Crump. Please look up their firm. If you need a lawyer down in Florida, that's a great place to go to get some help, www.parkscrump.com. Great job. Appreciate the work, and hope to have you back soon, Benjamin.
Thank you, Adam, and I really appreciate your show and you trying so hard to tell the stories of so many people who never get their stories told.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Benjamin. You take care.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's been one really kind of deep and dark show so far tonight. I want to thank our previous guest, Gloria Allred, and Benjamin Crump, to bring us up to date on some real compelling legal cases that are going on. But we got to lighten it up now, because if everyone's listening out there, the state of the world and what some people do is just so depressing. So let's lighten it up, and no better person to do that with than my next guest. If you know anything about comedy, you follow the comedy circuit anywhere, one of the most standout comics that there are doing stand-up right now, and an emerging artist, is none other than Ray Ellin. He's the host of Late Night with Ray Ellin, and he's also hosting the new version of The Gong Show. So welcome to the show, Ray Ellin. How are you, Ray?
Good, Adam. How you doing, man? Nice to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I'm fired up. All this stuff, you watch TV today, and I don't know where you start with all the different stories on these popular these people from Justin Bieber to Kanye West. There's one crazy story after the next in pop culture these days, but it's no different with the people in politics. I mean, what do you make of all this?
Well, I'll tell you, man, it's crazy what's going on. The whole thing with Chris Christie, that's just, with him shutting down the bridge. It's like being back in high school, man. It's like, I don't like you, so I'm going to take this thing away from you. I actually thought it could have been a mistake, and he said to everybody, look, I want to lose weight, so, shut down the fridge. And maybe they misunderstood him, and said they shut down the bridge. That's what I think. But you can't trust a man who had that surgery done, that stomach surgery. I mean, so he has no stomach now, and yet he can't lose weight. I can't trust a man who basically removed his stomach from his body, and then he's getting bigger and bigger. It makes no sense to me. He's like,
it's scary in a way, right? There's some mutation. It's scary. There's some mutation going on there somewhere. Something we don't know about.
There's something we don't know. Something's going on in Jersey that he got money to some sort of chemical plant in Jersey, and it's just sort of backfired on him, and it's just making him turn to some massive beast. I have no idea. I don't know.
I don't know, but politics is just crazy like that. I mean, you take a character like Chris Christie. What about Clay Aiken? He's going to run now for Congress in North Carolina.
Clay Aiken, I don't have a problem with Clay Aiken. I mean, I think he means well. I think he has good intentions. I think he probably, he probably really wants to help people. I don't think he's an egomaniacal person. But, if he doesn't win, the good news is he's used to being a runner-up. And
you think he's going to use that in his platform, that he really did his own on the Celebrity Apprentice?
It's possible that could be the route he takes, But he seems like an okay guy. It's funny. George Bush appointed Clay Aiken to some sort of presidential commission focused on people with intellectual disabilities, which that to me just seems sort of ironic. I mean, President Bush appointing a guy to a commission on people who have trouble, who have mentally challenged. That's like Bill Clinton, assigning a prostitute on a commission for oral sex. I don't know.
I hear you. I remember when I was going to law school in Philadelphia, there was a giant billboard that the mayor had put up, and I kid you not, this is true. It said, "If you have trouble reading, call this number for help."
That's funny.
I was like, really? Really? How many different people's hands did this go through for approval before it got put on this big 100 by 100 billboard for everyone to see? That no one said what? Unreal. Well, maybe Clay Aiken will bring a different thing if he runs for office. He has a little bit of style. He has that different kind of celebrity vibe going for him. You think he'll bring in someone like Ryan Seacrest to provide wardrobe? Because I hear Ryan Seacrest is going to a clothing line now.
Yeah, right. Ryan Seacrest. That's actually not a bad idea. If Clay Aiken, I'll tell you what, man. If Clay Aiken gets Ryan Seacrest to endorse him, Clay Aiken could really, he could actually win in a landslide if all those, because the only problem is all the people from American Idol, they think that the vote in general is you just, you punch it in on your cell phone. They don't know you actually have to go to a voting booth to actually, vote. But Ryan Seacrest, he's created this new clothing line that I heard about. It's for men. It matches all the clothes with each other. It's essentially Garanimals for adults. Remember when you were a kid, you had those Garanimals?
Right.
It helps guys, match up suits and jackets, jackets and shirts and pants. It just proves how dumb men are, because women have all kinds of accessories and they have so many options between your shirts and skirts and pants, and they manage to do it all by themselves. And for us, he's basically got like a paint by number system for men. I was
going to say, are the clothes going to be numbered like number 1 goes with number 2 or number 3, or you can wear number 5?
Yeah, 1 goes with 1, and sometimes 1 can go with 2. But if you try to put 1 with 3, then a Kardashian's head will explode. But I think they should make formal wear. They should have like tuxedos with the feet already attached in the pants. Just make it all like, or even better than that. Instead of having a color coding system, there should be 3 judges who show up at your house and critique what you're wearing. That's what they should do. Just make it more like American Idol.
Well, I'm sure all the little teeny boppers will be coming in to vote. But, what chances does Clay Aiken really have? He's running in North Carolina. Is that really the right state for a known outspoken gay advocate to really run? Is he really going to get a following? Because that's a pretty conservative state from what I understand.
I'm pretty sure that the person he's to take on I think it's a Republican, a female Republican. And, yeah, if you're an openly gay man, good for him that he probably helped, millions of people by when he comes out and and all that kind of thing. But I don't know if North Carolina, I don't know how progressive of a state North Carolina is. Are they, what's the deal? Are they cool with gay marriage and all that? I think it's more likely that pot. I think crystal meth might become legal before gay marriage in North Carolina. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know how they feel down there. I'm a New York guy. We don't care about anything. You could be a gay man, or you could be a straight man having sex with a donkey while using heroin on a subway. We mind our own business. We don't care.
It's all good in New York City. That's why I love the Big Apple.
Yeah, people can do whatever they want here, And by the way, that whole Ryan Seacrest thing, what's interesting? If anyone is going to create a clothing line, he's really the guy to do it because he's such a popular TV host, so people might actually want to buy his clothes. Remember the guy who used to host the show with that guy, Brian Dunkelman?
Right. Whatever happened to that guy?
I don't know whatever happened to him. He was on the first year of American Idol. He co-hosted the show with Ryan Seacrest. But if he comes out with a clothing line, it's going to be all barrels and suspenders and, trash bag suits and tinfoil hats.
Now, how you feeling if you're that guy? You're probably known as the biggest asterisk in the history of television, because here's a guy at the end of the first season, from what I remember, he lobbied to get more money, and when they wouldn't pay him a couple of bucks more, he said, then I'll walk off the show, and then the rest is history. I was like, didn't you learn from McLean Stevenson when he left MASH? Because he wanted more money? It's like he walked off a show that's now, 20 seasons in, and Ryan Seacrest is like now the new Dick Clark. I mean, that guy... if he hasn't jumped off a bridge yet, I don't know where he is or what he's doing, but he's got to be contemplating that every day.
It's crazy, man. People forget that at the end of the day, it's like a show like that. At the end of the day, it's about the show. I mean, you definitely want to have a good host. Ryan Seacrest is a really great host. But, it's about the competition. It's about the singers. The same way, Deal or No Deal, Howie Mandel did a really good job on it, but it's about the game, and your job is to just not interfere with the game. It's like Price is Right. I mean, as long as Drew Carey doesn't basically, just take a sledgehammer and break that wheel, he can't screw it up. You know what I mean? It's bulletproof, those shows.
Well, look, it's like Johnny Carson. You let the guests shine, you stay out of the way, and let the just entertainment part of it take over. So, now it's interesting. Tell us about the new Gong show, because, I mean, basically America's Got Talent stole that concept. Instead of hitting a gong, they're pressing an X button, and it's huge. It's one of the biggest shows on TV, and I always wondered, I mean, Ray Barris was a genius doing that show because it was so entertaining and funny, and here it is again, decades later, and still, in the top version. So now, where's this going to be airing, and how did you get involved in it? Tell us all about that.
Well, I'll tell you, the Gong Show really is true. It was sort of the grandfather of all the original kind of wacky variety shows. And I met with Chuck Barris, the creator and host of it. I met with him. What's funny is that they said to me when I met him, he's a really sweet guy. He's in his early 80s now. And when I met with him, people said to me, they go, listen, don't talk to him about the Gong Show, and don't ask him about any of that stuff about being in the CIA, because there was that movie about it.
I was just going to ask you about that.
And I was like, well, what do you want us to talk about? You want to trade recipes? Like, what are we going to talk about? It was ridiculous. So we talked for like the first few minutes. We talked about some of the books he's written, and I just said to him, I go, hey, so who was the craziest guest you had on the Gong Show? And he just opened up, and he was told great stories, and he was a really nice guy, and he gave me his blessing, the host. So the show right now, the way we do it, it's Gong Show Live. It's a live show off Broadway in New York City. And that's what we're doing here right now, and it's just like the original show. I mean, you have a live band, you have 3 judges, you have the gong. Instead of Gene the Dancing Machine, we have a descendant of his named Keen Gene the Dancing Machine, and it's awesome. It's a great time, and if anyone passes through New York City, they should come and watch this show live on a stage in a theater before it takes off and it becomes even this bigger monster, because it's awesome. It's really fun. Well, I wear a wig when I do the show. I wear a wig and to look more like Chuck Barris, because in real life I have really long hair. I look like a founding father right now. It's ridiculous.
Well, listen, imitation is the best form and sincerest form of flattery. So, do you have someone like Rip Taylor who used to come out and throw the confetti all over the place and go nuts?
Yeah, we have some outrageous people who come out, man. It's really a good time. It really is great. It's and it's funny. It really is true. It's good. Like if they're 8 years old or 80 years old, it doesn't matter. Everybody loves the show. It's really cool.
But I want to thank you for coming on the show. I urge everybody, if you are in New York and you get the opportunity, I urge everybody to go see the new Gong Show that is running, and I guarantee you, if Ray's involved and he's hosting it, it's going to be hilarious, and you're going to have a good time. Ray, thanks for joining us today. Please come back soon. Okay, everybody, that's all the time we have. It was another great show. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Remember, visit us on our website, www.attorneyadamthompson.com or www.adamthompsonlaw.com. While you're there, make sure you visit us on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter page. Leave us your comments, your questions, your thoughts. We love hearing from you. Some of the stuff is absolutely hilarious. I look forward to reading it every day, and keep those emails coming. Until next time, as always, everybody, think outside the box.